morning, everybody. How are you all? That's great to hear. So for today's program, I want to thank 3 of the companies that provided us their support to be able to bring this program to you. And the first one is Sanofi-Genzyme, and I hope that you all thank them as well. Clap, clap. And that took a lot out of you. And then we also have Biogen and Mallinckrodt, and all 3 of them wanted us to have this series called Balance brought to various portions of the United States. And so they've supported us in what we're doing. We just held this program a week and a half ago in San Diego, 2 nights ago in Savannah. And in Savannah, you know, we expected a small crowd, yet we had 58 people there to attend. It was really nice. So next, we have Jeffrey Segal. And for those who have never seen Jeffrey, well, hopefully you'll get into everything he's going to do with you today. Recently, Jeffrey's been after me for a long time to start doing some workouts with him. And with my schedule, it's been like nearly impossible. Well, he pinned me down while we were just out of town the other day, and he got me into 2 days of doing the exercise with him. And it feels great, really does. A little tender, but feels great. And I really want to continue this with him, and I'm hoping that you all get something out of it as well. So let me tell you that Jeff Segal is a recipient of the 2007 National Strength and Conditioning Association Worldwide Authority on Strength and Conditioning. He was once Personal Trainer of the Year. Authored articles for numerous MS publications, in addition to other things such as Shape magazine. He's the owner of Balance Personal Training, Inc. since 2004. He's a national motivational and educational speaker, a graduate of, this is going to get a boo, Florida State University. All right, and person living with MS since 1998. And here's Jeff Segal.
Thank you, Stu. This is going to be great. Trust me. Now I got to live up to it. Well, first I want to thank Stuart for doing these programs. They're phenomenal. You guys would not get half the information that you have without him doing these things and getting such quality speakers like Megan, which I'm going to try to recruit to come down to South Florida. I'm just kidding. I would get killed by somebody in this room, I'm sure. Because if it wasn't for her, I don't know how many people would be in here. Maybe 3, 4, 5. But I'm here to talk about exercise, MS, different things that exercise and health and just maintaining general health, what they can do for MS. And I'm going to go back to when I was really young in, let's see, 1380. That's when the first first person was born with a case of MS that we know about and lived until 1433, Ludwina van Scheiden. Well, so MS has been around for some time. Then the next big thing was Charcot identifying it as not being the same thing as Parkinson's, which that came from checking the brain and not seeing plaque versus and seeing plaque versus when people with Parkinson's had their brain checked and there was no plaque there. Moving along, the next big thing in MS came in the early 70s, and that was me. I'm just kidding. There's been a lot that happened over the years, but not until the early 90s, which was the biggest breakthrough when meds came out. So that being said, I remember being diagnosed, there being 3 meds, thinking, wow, there's only 3 medicines, and that was only for a few years at that time. Now is probably the best time to have MS in the history of MS because there's so many ways to treat it, and there's so much more knowledge. Not enough yet, but we're working on that. And when we're speaking about exercise and diet and that stuff, because diet and exercise go hand in hand, 1996 was the first study that really showed the effects of exercise in MS. That was the University of Utah. Before that, for the most part, people were told not to exercise. It was kind of, it was something that you'd have to do without talking to your neurologist about it because your neurologist wanted you to do well. They knew that heat was a factor and caused some issues. They knew fatigue. How many people in here have fatigue? I mean, we talked, half of her talk was about fatigue. It kept going back to fatigue, right? And cognition. And what about fatigue? No, I'm just kidding. That's my cognitive issues. I might repeat myself a few times or even repeat myself a few times. But cognition is an issue. Cognition and fatigue, I think, go hand in hand from reading and learning about it as well as living it. I mean, when you're tired, it's a lot more difficult to remember. So as a trainer, I work with people one-on-one. I also work in groups, and I do groups in research. So I'm seeing the benefits every day, all the time, and I love it because the way I got into it was getting, an education in exercise science, and then being diagnosed with MS, and then having problems and asking the doctor what to do and being told don't exercise. And that was my life. I mean, I was in the gym probably more days of the year than I wasn't for the majority of my life, from the age of maybe 13 or 14. So to be told you can't exercise is like throwing the towel in. No way, I don't quit. I don't know how to quit. Quitting is, a shortcut to failure, and nobody likes to fail, but you do fail. Failing is okay because the more you fail, the more you get back to what you're trying to do and succeed. So when I was, when I was awarded with the big Personal Trainer of the Year award that he'd mentioned, it kind of freaked me out because I wasn't trying to get the award. I was in Atlanta at the time, and they announced my name. I looked around, and I was wondering, wow, isn't it a coincidence someone else has the same name as me? Out of the whole country, and it's the same name. So then I got up on stage, and I loved it. It was great because that allowed me to reach out to more people with MS and other neurological issues, because I was doing research at the time on myself and to see what exercise can do, and it's profound, it's incredible. So I'm going to skip forward years from the mid-90s when the first study came out from the University of Utah to what just came out recently at ECTRIMS. You know what ECTRIMS is? It's the European, all the Europeans, like the European Consortium for MS. They have a study from Hamburg that's a little east of here. And it shows that exercise can actually help, well, possibly, but it helps with memory. And it also helps with things like brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, long stuff. That's something that can increase in your brain over time. That's helpful. It's brain growth or neurogenesis, or exercise-induced neurogenesis. And they say the brain stops growing at a certain time. Well, if you exercise, you might get some of that back. You might get some memory back. You may get less symptoms in all sorts of different ways, and also less atrophy to the brain. So fatigue and cognition. When I'm with somebody who's telling me that they have problems with fatigue, I don't jump to, oh wow, you have MS. What do you expect? No, it's not always MS. I mean, think about it. If you were to write down all the stuff that's going on in your life, which is what I'm basically asking the people I work with, I ask them, well, you've got fatigue today. Sometimes they say, I'm too tired to exercise today. They got to tell someone else that. Because there's always something you can do. And if you keep practicing, I mean, I don't like settling on good or great. I want to be the best I can possibly be right now. And when I say right now, that's like the cue to everybody. You do the best you can right now. Don't compare yourself to the best you were ever in your life, because you're probably skipping out on the hard work that you got put in to get to that point. Does that make sense? Like if I ask half of you here, do you exercise, and a few of you say no, one of the reasons for I don't know why everybody does it. I mean, maybe it's ego. I don't know what it is. You'll tell me, I used to be able to, right? And whatever that used to be able to do was at the very best you ever were. You forget about how the hard work and all the hard work you put into that, right? I mean, you can't forget that. Hard work pays off as long as you do it. And that's what happens with exercise. Exercise is a progressive thing. You don't start out where you left off 15 years ago when you're the best, because that's a quick route to failure. That's as fast a route as you're going to get, and you're going to get hurt. I mean, you go back to the gym and do what you did 5 years ago, you're probably going to have torn muscle, torn tendons, torn ligaments, all kinds of stuff that you do not want. How many people in here don't go to the gym because you're afraid of what people are going to think of you? Well, don't worry about it. In the gym, people only care about themselves. It's true. You know, that's just like, it's the same thing about, oh, I want to look so great tonight because you want to feel good, right? About yourself. Other people aren't judging you as much as they're judging themselves. So just go out and be yourself. Enjoy life. That's what this is all about. Exercise is about having fun. Exercise is about having fun at a little bit higher level each time you do it. How many people in here think of exercise and the last thing that comes to your mind is fun? I mean, I guarantee you a lot of you are thinking that. I mean, it is fun if you do it right. You do the right types of exercises that you enjoy. And when I like to compare things like that and help you understand, how many of you played as a child? Okay, there we go. And if you did, how many of you remember being tired from playing? You remember getting tired?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, be tired, but you never stopped.
Yeah.
And everybody was keeping up with the next person they're playing. That's being well conditioned. You weren't fatigued during the day because at the end of school or whatever it was, you were out playing, you were out running, you were out doing all kinds of stuff, not thinking about, oh, I need to get in better condition. No, you just keep up and have fun. You know, until, I'll tell you, when you're playing outside as a child, the slowest you can possibly be is when you hear your parents calling you in for dinner. You're running and all of a sudden, right? Movement is key. We got to move more. We got to move more so that we want to move more and we can move more. Spasticity. How many people have spasticity? And some people better raise their hands because you did for her. So spasticity, what happens in spasticity, I can explain it from maybe a little bit different perspective, but muscular co-contractions. Do you know what that is? No? Awesome. I get to teach you what it is. That's when you have an agonist muscle fighting the antagonist. And what ends up happening is that's how people are on stage flexing. You know, when you see a bodybuilder on stage and they're doing this. Well, when I'm doing this with my arm, right now I'm flexing my bicep and I'm flexing my tricep, or else my arm would keep going like this. So when I'm here, this muscle and this muscle are both playing tug of war, and they're both contracting, right? So that's the same thing that happens when the brain signals are kind of messed up, crossed, frayed, whatever you want to call it, and the signal doesn't get all the way to the place you want it to, and it's just sending a signal of contract. So now you got, like what she was talking about with the flexors and the extensors of the leg that make your legs stiff. It's because this is fighting this. There's 4 muscles here, there's 3 muscles here, 4 win, the leg straightens out. Now you're walking like Frankenstein, right? Or if you can get your foot up, because that also has some issues, or your foot will drop. So the best thing the best thing for spasticity or for muscle weakness or for the inability to control it is exercise and strengthening it, because a tight muscle is a weak muscle. You know, a small muscle is a weak muscle. And you want to strengthen as much of the muscles as you can, and not just doing curls and single joint exercises, movement like you do on a daily basis. That's how you get it to be fun. Also stretching. Stretching is so important. Megan had mentioned stretch throughout the day. Yeah, do that. Don't stretch when you're tight. In the summer here, you don't have to loosen up too much because you just have to go outside and you're loosened up because it's so hot out, right? In the winter, if you go far enough south where we are, it's the same thing. It's just hot. I mean, I turned my heater on for like 2 hours this year. Usually it's 15 minutes once a year in the summer to burn the dust off in case it gets cold, which I know it's not going to. So when it comes to having these spasticity issues, she identified where most of the spasticity is, where you stretch those muscles in the same manner that you would strengthen them. So if this is contracting your bicep, bringing it this way, if your bicep is having spasticity, what you would do is elongate the muscle. A bicep stretch would be just putting your arm down like this, bringing it back, and give that a shot. Arm down, you feel your biceps stretching? It's a simple stretch. That's called an active stretch, not a passive stretch. A passive stretch is when you move it into the position or someone else is pushing it. Can you feel it? And one thing when you're stretching that you ought to do, or really remember, don't bounce. That's what we used to do in PE, right? We learned all the wrong stuff in PE. But they're teaching them the right way now. But the wrong stuff would be bouncing and touching your toes. You're tearing your muscles when you're doing that. And you're doing that when you're tight. Now you got to run. People have you run or loosen up before you stretch, because muscles are like rubber bands. And rubber bands, if you were to stick into a refrigerator or a freezer for a couple hours, pull it out and stretch it, one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to snap or it's going to stay long. And if your muscle stays long, it's not going to really work so well. It's going to be too loose and not able to contract. So some other muscles were the quadricep that don't get as much spasticity. How many people in here who have spasticity have a lot of it in the front of their leg? It's not so much because, especially in the US, we spend most of our days in a chair, seated, watching TV, doing all this other stuff. But whatever it is, when you're seated, this part is on stretch. So it's bent like this. That's how you stretch your quadricep. The hamstring is what tightens up and what you have spasticity and cramping in, because it's always shortened when you're seated for a long period of time. So there's a lot of great hamstring stretches that you can do throughout the day. Also, your hip flexors have some problems. They're weak, and you need to stretch those too, and I'll show you some ways to stretch them. Does anybody like to come up and volunteer? I know the best person to do this stuff, who's just getting started with a great program himself. So come on up, Stuart.
I don't remove my tie for this.
Oh, he's going to use it to strangle me. Yeah, just jump up. Okay, some flexibility things that you can do. Hey, I showed you give me your hand. Here. He trusts me. Not everyone would give me. So when I tell people to relax and see, he's not doing it right. Okay, so if he had stiffness or tightness in his arm, his bicep, what I would do is have him turn his arm, pronate it, turn your hand down. You feel your bicep?
Oh, yeah.
A lot more so now. See, with him, he can feel every single muscle he has right now because he just started an exercise program. That's not what I like to have happen to people, but what I do is a lot of functional exercises. That's for the bicep. Functional exercises, because you want it to have a function of what you do in daily life rather than just sitting somewhere or being locked into something. When your feet are your ground base of support, the kinetic chain goes to your head and down. So with him, now if his tricep was tight, I would do this. I'm not going to go much further because he in case he had a bad shoulder or something like that. Can you feel your tricep stretching? Say yes. See, and if you were to bring your elbow forward, now do you feel your tricep?
No.
Watch this. See, I can't get your tricep as much because your shoulder isn't allowing it. You're safeguarding your shoulder. Let's do the other arm.
He knows I have a bad shoulder.
I'm just a specialist and can tell by the way he was smiling. His shoulder is bad. Now can you feel your tricep?
Yes.
So that's a tricep stretch. Now if you want to stretch your shoulders, it's simple. This is something you can do yourself. Here, under the arm. And now pull across towards me. So you're stretching this and here.
Yes. I feel that too.
Some of the best stretches are the ones you do when you get out of bed in the morning. You're stretching your abs that way. So the more you move, you're stretching. The more range of motion you have, you're stretching. If you're exercising and you're doing full range of motion activities like what we were doing a couple days ago, if you do a row, you're stretching your chest while strengthening your posterior delts and your back. When you do a push-up, when you're on the ground, thanks. Appreciate that.
I greatly appreciate it.
Good job. I'll have you come up in a few minutes if I can't get another volunteer. If you're doing a push-up, when you're here, your back is stretching. When you're all the way down here, your chest is on stretch. Coming up, you're stretching your back. So you're doing full range of motion in those exercises, but you're increasing your flexibility. When you're more flexible in terms of able to move around and have better range of motion that's functional and doing things that you do on a daily basis, you're better at living. I mean, that just makes things a lot easier. Those are the best stretches that you can do are in full range of motion while you're moving. Active stretches, stuff that's part of your routine. So I tell people, some people who I have really doing great long programs and been working with for a long time, they said, why don't you stretch me at the end of the exercise? And the reason is because they're stretching throughout the whole program. And sometimes I do have to have people stretch at the end because they have spasticity or tightness. But if you do full range of motion exercises, you're doing flexibility exercises as well. So some other things that I want you to know about stretching, let's see. Going back to the days of phys ed, they did some incorrect stretches that hurt a lot of people, which brought us to the new improved types of stretches, such as the hamstring stretch. How many of you guys remember doing a hamstring stretch like this? I can feel the pain in my knee. I also had knee surgery last year, but it might have been from that. Now they did the modified hurdler stretch. That's this. So some of the important things about stretching is when you're stretching your hamstrings, if you feel behind the knee, the stretch back there, bend your knee a little bit. You'll still get a stretch in the hamstring because behind the knee is the tendon. You don't stretch tendons, they don't stretch. They snap. You don't want to snap tendon. So you do that, try to get it here. Now if you can straighten it without getting that pain, even better. For the stretch that I did with Stuart for the tricep, if you have great enough flexibility to grab your hand and pull your arm back with the other arm, hey, more of the world to you, but you probably don't need to do as much stretching. This is the same thing. My tricep is burning right now. You can use this also to do, if you can't reach your toe, doing this, or if you were in bed, it's that. Now to stretch the hip flexors, don't get them confused with the knee extensors because knee extensors are here, hip flexors are this. So to do that, you can either, if you have good balance, this, but not just this, it's this, and out, and up, if you can. And that'll come all the way up into here. Or this foot flat, knee bent, this toe down, drop your body. If you got something to hold on to, lean back. Holding on to it, it's coming all the way up into my abs. One of your hip flexors actually connects from here through your body, through your abdomen into your lumbar spine, your psoas. Anyone heard of that muscle? It's a hip flexor, but if it's tight, bad back. So you want to keep it loose. Any questions about stretching?
Yes.
Who? Okay, I'll keep going while you get to that. Keep your question. Okay, you got it?
Are there any hips stretches for someone who sits in the chair all the time?
The same ones that are for people who don't. You'd have to do it in a laying down position for your hips to stretch because your hips are tight. If you're in a chair all day, they're really going to get tight. Sometimes just laying down on a bed or something will stretch out your hip flexors because rather than being here in a seated position, now you're straight, so that would put it on a little bit of a stretch. But if you were to lay on your stomach and somebody who knows what they're doing, you make sure they're competent. Have somebody pull, but they also need to get your leg up and then pull. So you have to make sure they know what they're doing so they don't hurt your back while they're doing that. Did I answer your question? Okay. We've got another question over here, and then I'm going to move on to some other active stuff.
How do you when you have spasticity in your hands? Do you have a stretch for that?
For what?
Spasticity, like my hands will just clench up, and
if they clench up, this would be both hands. You can just do something like this.
And what about your calves?
Calf. Instead of coming up on your toe, have your foot flat on the ground, and that's getting the whole calf. Or in a seated position, you can do it and even come forward, and that gets your soleus rather than your gastrocnemius, which is higher. Okay, we good? Did that help?
I think so.
All right. So some exercise stuff. I'm famous for these. The other thing that I'm famous for, I forgot. Memory, remember? Was the balloon stuff. But these are furniture movers, furniture sliders. Anybody ever use these for exercise?
Yeah. Therapy.
They're great. I mean, they slide on the ground. You can loosen up your hips with them like that. Use them as a prop for balance. Right now I'm working on balance on this leg while this leg's moving, so I'm getting 2 for 1 on it. And you can also go into a single-legged squat or something like that.
Makes it look very easy.
It's yeah, it's good to hold on. If you have someone there, you hold on to them or something. And it's also good to teach a proper form of lunge. Lunge works the strongest, most important muscle, if you ask me, in the body, which is your glutes. Glutes are a major part of your core. You hear about core? They have meds for walking, but if you don't have a strong core, you're going to walk away from your body. And that's what happens when this isn't strong. So this from here to here, front and back, if that's strong, that gives you stability. Stability to me comes before balance because stability is this. Where balance is this, what are you going to do with that? You're going to go like this and go to work like that? No. You want to be stable before you can have or achieve balance. Balance is good for measuring, a tool to see where you are versus where you once were. So with the furniture mover, you know, doing rotational stuff, I'm going to sit down here. I don't know how many people can see from back there, but what I'm going to do is show you how to do it from a chair. Actually, I'm going to grab a chair. I like when people sit up straight. You don't have to do it all right now at the same time, but without the support here while they're exercising, because that helps with your core, and that also prevents you from slouching and sitting back like this. But when you're exercising or doing something, this is a good exercise for flexion and extension of the knee, especially if you have problems with your hip flexor, bringing it up. You can still move your leg forward and back, opposed to that's using your hip flexor. This is just flexor and extensor of the knee. Circles for the hip, that's working your hip. And when you're starting a program, you have to know where you're starting at, so that's where the assessment comes in. I assess people before they realize I am. Like when I was sitting out there watching people walk in, I'm watching everybody's gait. I can tell who's got strengths and weaknesses in their internal and external rotators of their hips just from the way they walk or the way they sit down. So what I would see is if you see somebody walking and this happens and their knee comes inward, automatically tell me that they have weak external rotators of the hip. So what do? Something like that. It's working this hip. Because I can do that without even grounding my foot. But I'm pushing back with this leg and then pushing forward with this one. External rotation. If I see their knee do this, especially if they're, if they sit down and this happens, it's going to either do this, or be neutral. For the internal rotator weakness, it would be something like a pivot or a pull with a band, or like I have here. I'll have somebody come up shortly. So while you guys are thinking about who's going to raise your hand to come up, I'm going to move on to this. Exercise bands. Who would like to be the next candidate? I need somebody to come up here. Tick-tock, here we go. That's the thing, is the clock's ticking. And it doesn't stop for anybody. So in life, you got to do what you can when you can, because there's only so much time you have, and time does not come back, right? Okay, so have a seat. Can you do squats? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Stand up. Don't put your hands on your knees, though. Do that again. Sit down. Stand up again. Okay, do that 100 times. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll be here a while.
Okay, so you're pretty stable. So you're with somebody that has MS, right?
Yes.
Ah, okay. But that's okay, because I do the same thing with people who don't have MS. So now come over. If I want you to face kind of this way a little bit.
Okay.
Put your hands on my hand. Now what I want you to do is stand on one leg. Whistle? No, I'm just kidding. Now I want you to do a partial squat with that one leg.
Just this leg?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah. Do it again. Okay, I can see it coming in just a little bit. You know what that tells me? That you've probably sat like this a lot in your life, right? Men sit like this, so that weakens external rotators, women like that. So for you, what I'm going to have you do it without the band first is just pivot back and forth internal. Now the key is shoulders and hips square. So if you kept doing that, then yeah, now that's for the internal. Now for the external rotator, do this. Now step back in, push off hard. That's using the external rotator to come in. Now, let's get funky with it. Here.
Right.
Okay, what I want you to do is, you know how to do a row? Okay, have you ever shot a bow and arrow? Okay. And I'm kind of worried now. No, I'm just kidding. What I want you to do is, just like as if you're going to pull the bow back, but step back with it.
That?
Yeah, there you go. Now come forward. Now do the other side. So she's opening up her hips while her shoulders and hips are square. And the other one, pull, 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 pull.
Oh, both?
No, pull. There you go.
That's a difficult one.
Yeah. So, and the other one. Okay. Now you see, she wasn't perfectly stable, right?
I need to hear her say she's being video recorded.
I'm being video recorded.
Do you consent to being video recorded, or we'll wipe it out?
You better wipe it out. No.
No? But you're good with it?
Yeah.
Okay. So by doing that, she's using, opening up her hips, using her, using her shoulders. But the one thing I want you guys to notice was, that's not a movement that you do all the time, right? So because you don't do it all the time, you haven't neurally adapted to it, and you're a little bit off balance, right? Like everybody here who is having problems with balance all the time, but because you did something new, you had a little bit of balance issue. Right. Doesn't take long to fix that, maybe a little bit longer for people with MS, but now you know what people with MS go through on a daily basis just by taking a step, or just by getting up and they're a little bit off balance or something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When you're exercising, okay, then we have to wait for the microphone.
You gotta turn it on. Not her, microphone.
Tell me how that exercise is functional.
Well, the exercise is functional in many ways, because when you change direction, what do? You can either do this, which takes a lot longer, or here and go. So if you're walking and you change direction. That's what's functional about that. The pulling part is also opening up your shoulders, preventing shoulder problems, which are very common because if you don't move around enough, your shoulders tighten and you can have issues in your shoulders. The pulling is working your posterior delts and your rotator cuff muscles. You're actually externally rotating your shoulder a little bit while you're doing that. Does that answer your question? Okay. So when you're starting an exercise program, the neural adaptation phase, that's the first 4 to 6 weeks of doing a new movement. And you start getting better and better at it. And I'll show you what neural adaptation is over a really quick, like a few reps. If I were to tell somebody who's really in good shape, has good flexibility, decent balance, I want you to touch your toe while standing on one leg, it wouldn't be that easy, right? It would look probably something like this. It might not be able to do it. That's okay, try again. I'd say try it again. Now it looks a little bit better, right? But a little bit wobbly. Now try it again. Wow, that was pretty smooth, right? Until you get here, and now you can keep going, and doing it with the other one, a little wobbly, a little bit better, a little bit better. It's practice, but it's nerve practice. You're practicing a neurological pattern, and once you're able to do it, boom, you got it. You can keep practicing it, and it gets better and better and better. That's neural adaptation to an exercise. And the first 6 to 8 weeks of an exercise program, what's going to happen is, how many people in here have done a bench press with dumbbells? Can you remember back to when either you did it the first time or you went back to doing it, how you're a little bit unsteady, and then all of a sudden after doing it a few times, it's easier, and now you can use more weight and heavier and heavier? You haven't really gotten exponentially stronger. You're just able to move things better because you've neurally adapted to that motion. So after that 6 to 8 weeks happens, then you start to be able to see the difference. But in that 6 to 8 weeks, you will feel the difference, and you can feel it in what you're doing on a daily basis. That's functional. That's taking exercise and putting it into your daily life and showing how much function the exercise is going to improve on. Why wouldn't you want to do that? I have no idea. I wish more people would understand that just like working at your job, exercising can be hard, it can be difficult, but the better you do at it, the better results you get. At work, it's in the form of money, right? Hard work pays off. You don't go to work and do nothing and expect a paycheck. You don't go to the gym and watch other people exercise and expect to get bigger and stronger. It's not going to happen. So those things are important to know. I mean, the toughest thing about starting an exercise program or working out in general, what do you think it is? Getting your butt in the gym, or getting into that phase. I've had people tell me, well, I don't know how to start. I have a treadmill, and but that's a good thing. You have a treadmill. You made the first step. Second step is, well, you've had it for a year. You got to get all the clothes off of it. The boxes, all that stuff has to come off the treadmill. And then you know what the prescription I would give them is? Get on it. Stand on it. See what it's like to stand on the treadmill. If you're able to stand on the treadmill. There's things for people who can't stand. There's stuff that for people who can't do much of any movement, and I'll get into that, but it's important to start something. So I've had somebody who I was working with who had ALS. Her husband needed to exercise. So I ended up telling him, we worked something out, had him stand on the treadmill for 2 minutes, 3 times a week until I came back the next week. And he said, well, what do you mean stand on it? Just stand on it. Get all the garbage off of it and stand on it for 2 minutes. Came back and what did I hear? Yo, you're not going to believe it. I'm like, what? What is it? When I stood on the treadmill, I felt so stupid, I started walking. Oh my goodness. Go figure. And I did it for 20 minutes. I didn't go too fast, but then the next time I did it for 25 minutes, increased the speed a little bit, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. So without getting onto the treadmill, you cannot walk on a treadmill. Without getting on a stationary bike, the stationary bike's going to do nothing but take up space. And that's what we're doing when we're not doing anything. And there's ones that you can plug in that move by themselves for people who have difficulty moving. And then you can ride a bike with your arms on a table. They sit right on the table. You can plug it in. I've done that with somebody before where I'd turn it on and they'd tell me, well, can you make it a little bit less, electrical or whatever, just slow it down a little bit? Okay. Well, I was doing that with her for like 3 months. The first 2 months I had it on high, then lower, and then lower. The last month, didn't even plug it in. She didn't know that though. She was doing it, and then she said, maybe we should do it without it being plugged in. And then I showed her the plug. So it's really gratifying to see things happen and to see people transform. They do. It's different. It's not just MS that stops people from being able to do stuff. It's not doing stuff. I mean, you got to be active. The body was meant to move. The body was meant to have a high metabolism and react and do all these different things. Whether you have MS or not, you're going to be able to react. You know, your nervous system is so profound, and it controls all the other systems. So it's frustrating because we have a disease that, it's like the conductor is dyslexic. You know, I mean, if you tell your right arm to do this and your left arm does this, or you tell this muscle to do this and the other muscle's doing that. So that's another way of looking at MS, is the boss up here is speaking a completely different language, especially when he's tired, especially when he hasn't eaten, or especially when he's argued with someone that he loves and has all this stress and weight on their back. What's the outcome? Can't remember anything. Because so much is going on up here, right? You guys understand that? That's not just MS. That's anybody. You have your files all open at the same time. Now try to remember something that I just said 2 minutes ago. Huh? Right? I repeat myself a lot. I mean, sometimes I do it on purpose because I know that if I don't say something 5 times before getting up on stage, I'll tell you some other important information, but that one thing will not get up to the stage. It's still over there in the bag. But I do say things over and over again to myself. Sometimes I say them out loud and don't remember it, and then the people around me are like, gosh, this guy's so annoying. He just told me the same thing 3 times. You guys ever experience that? Yes. What about some of these other things which are coming from the brain and the nervous system? Anybody in here ever miss their coffee cup when they're pouring a cup of coffee? Oh my God, where you got that from? The same thing is when you turn a corner and you walk out of a room and you catch your shoulder on the door. You guys ever have that happen? You know what it is? People know when people with MS are around and they move the door when we're not looking, right? I'm not sure if my shoulder problems are from overuse or from hitting my shoulders on doors like that, because it happens all the time. Now, you know what you can do to help that? Strengthen your core. Because that door that you bump into could be somebody when you're walking at the mall and you misjudge and you hit their shoulder. And if you have a strong core, that might be the difference between if you stay on your 2 feet or you're on the ground. And that's here. I mean, that's all here. And it might be the difference between just bumping into somebody very lightly and not even noticing it because your body adapted and went back to proper position, or falling down. So I don't know anybody who's gotten hurt falling, right? You guys anybody in here ever get hurt falling? No, it's landing, right? You land, that's when you get hurt. But the stronger you are and the more physically fit you are, if you did fall, A, you may not hurt yourself as much. B, you might recover faster. C, it might look pretty graceful. And D, you might be able to get up. So how many people cannot get up off the ground? It's not easy. I'm doing research right now, and the outcomes are phenomenal. I have 10 people doing a 10-week program, and I'm on my second group of them. Each group had about half the people that started off could not get up off the ground without assistance or without grabbing onto something. Both groups, at the end of the 10 weeks, everybody was able to stand up off the ground. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be able to do that, but most of the people who couldn't get up off the ground, it wasn't because they couldn't, it was because they didn't realize the right way for them to do it was X, Y, or Z. So I showed them how to do it. But then strengthening helps. And the more you strengthen, the better your balance might be. And that's another key. I mean, I see some people that get into this position and they can't balance themselves. So you work on that. And getting up from right here, that's difficult because you have to use a lot of glutes. But if you there's other things that you can do to get up. If you're down here, if you're in this position and you can get here, or if you're strong in your upper body and your lower body's strong enough to do this, if you can get yourself to here, you can climb up. There's, everybody's got their way that works. When I'm working individually one-on-one with people, I figure out what their way is. And then there's some people that can't get up off the ground, or it's going to take a lot longer, and they have to get a lot looser and do a lot of flexibility training and stuff like that, so they can get their feet in the right position, hands in the right position, and have enough strength to get up. So the other thing I was going to talk about was diet with nutrition. The best diet for people with MS is a healthy diet.
Okay.
Healthy diet, well-rounded diet. Me, I'm on the Jeff Segal diet. Nobody else can be on that diet because it works for me only. And it comes from, what do I want to eat? I'm going to eat this, that, the other. They're all healthy. Find a diet that's good for a diabetic, and you've got a pretty good diet. Get rid of the white stuff, white bread, white potatoes, all that type of stuff, and replace it with things. That's how you change your diet, is you find an alternative to whatever food you were going to eat that was bad, that's good, that you're still willing to eat. Because if you're not willing to eat it, just like exercise, if you're not willing to do it, it's not going to help you. And if I could stay up here for an hour every day and have you guys watch me work out, if you guys could benefit from that, I would do it, but it's not. I'm just going to get in better and better shape, and by then I'll know all your names. I'm just kidding. I definitely wouldn't know all your names. I'd forget at least a few of your names time in, time out. But so the take-home message is you have the ability to do a lot. Don't worry about the things you can't do, because you can't do them. Worry about what you can do and worry about doing them better. Don't do them good. Don't try for great. Try for the best you possibly can right now, and do not expect to be perfect. Because being perfect is not a good thing, because there's no room for improvement if you're perfect. So do the best you can. Come to these programs. Learn. Talk to other people with MS. Grow with it. Don't let MS be the thing that's on your back that carries you around, that stops you from doing a bunch of stuff. Know what you can do it, and enjoy life, because we get one shot at it, and if we do it right, once is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, I want to thank Jeff. Jeff does a tremendous amount of programs with us in many states, but you can always see what he does. Thanks again. And you can always see what he does by going onto our YouTube channel. He changes the dialogue many times, often enough. And, again, it's just great to see and hear from people even after the programs that, they're trying Jeff's method is what we're going to call it. It's Jeff's method of learning. All right? So, and go with your own diet like he was talking about. And that's it.
And one thing I wanted to add, Stuart, is when you go to the YouTube channel, MS Views and News Learning Channel, all these videos are on there. You can check them out. We're going to be putting on a lot of great exercise demonstrations where you guys are going to get instruction from a standing position, seated position, unstable position. We want to cover A to Z, and you guys are going to have it on a silver platter waiting for you. So once we get done with that, you guys check out that site.
So anyway, I do want to thank you all for coming down here today. Again, I want to thank those that gave us the support to do today's program. I hope that you all enjoy what they did by allowing us to bring this to you today. We got Sanofi-Genzyme, Biogen, and Mallinckrodt. I do hope that you appreciate them. And also remember, please, that we have these seminar evaluation forms. We need you to fill them out. We want to view them, plus those that gave us the support needs to see them as well. So thank you again.